Picture this, you're cruising at 37,000 feet, seatbelt sign is off, you have a drink in hand, watching your favorite movie, when suddenly you're slammed into the ceiling, then back down into your seat. You feel the plane vibrating violently, and just when you catch your breath, it happens again. What could cause this? October 7th, 2008. Qantas Flight 72, cruising smoothly at 37,000 feet, was approaching the Australian border when something went horribly wrong. One of the Airbus A330's three critical computers, known as an ADIRU, began spitting out false data. Seconds later, the autopilot suddenly disconnected. The cockpit instantly lit up with warnings. Yet, when the crew checked their instruments, nothing matched. The captain's displays were showing fluctuating airspeeds and altitudes that just didn't make sense. But the first officer's instruments were perfectly normal. At this point, the captain didn't trust his own instruments and instead relied on the standby gauges and the first officer's readings. Then, just 2 minutes later, without warning, the aircraft snapped, nose down. The massive A330 suddenly pitched forward, flinging passengers into the ceiling like rag dolls. In a matter of seconds, the jet plunged nearly 700 feet. Some passengers slammed into overhead bins so hard that they even cracked them open. The captain fought the controls, pulling back on his side stick, but for a terrifying 2 seconds, the aircraft didn't respond at all. But finally, the jet leveled out. Just minutes after the first violent dive, as the crew struggled to make sense of the chaos in the cockpit, it happened again. This time, however, the descent was smaller, about 400 feet, but it was still just as terrifying and confusing. And just like before, when the captain pulled back on his controls, the aircraft ignored him for 2 long seconds. The captain knew he couldn't keep flying like this. He chose to fly the massive jet the old-fashioned way, raw stick and rudder, using only the backup instruments that he could trust. The crew then called up air traffic control. They diverted to the nearest airport capable of handling an A330, Learmonth, a remote military airfield in Western Australia, where they landed safely, and finally, the nightmare was over. But why did this happen? The sudden nose-down jerks experienced by QF-72 were caused by a combination of sensor failure and software limitation. A glitchy ADIRU spat out false angle of attack data. The flight control computer misprocessed it, believing the jet was stalling. The system then automatically responded with a dive command, and the situation occurred too fast for pilots to counter immediately. Since this incident, Airbus redesigned the algorithm to block such false commands, and procedures were updated to shut off faulty sensors before they could trigger critical control inputs.